It's his sister.
Why, hello there. You have a lovely voice.
Oh, you seem nice.
Well, what are you doing?
I'm just making some pre-made store-bought popcorn, and I was gonna put on a scary VHS.
Which movie?
It's this one called The Big Short. It's about the 2008 housing crisis. It's supposed to be super scary.
That does sound like a scary one. Pretty thing like you shouldn't watch it alone.
Well, why don't you join me, Charmer?
Maybe I should. You do look quite lovely in that tan sweater.
I never told you I was wearing a tan sweater. Okay, who is this? Who is this? I'm hanging up right now, weirdo!
Hold on, don't hang up.
Oh yeah? Well, FaceTime. Show your face! Show your face! In this video, we're going to be discussing the most blood-curdling money topic of all, inflation. But before we get started, if you could please slice the like button for me, slice the subscribe button for me, and also slice the bell notification icon. That way you get updated videos. I really appreciate it. This particular series will be split into 4 quadrilogy because there was a lot to cover here. There will also be intermittent jump scares just to, screw with you. Let's get started. Okay, to first understand inflation, To first understand inflation, we have to understand something fundamental about money. Money's like a living thing. It's like the poor helpless teenager that has ran and then twisted their ankle trying to get away from the killer. That killer is inflation. And unless you, the hero, magically runs in and saves your money, it will be killed by inflation. And here's where it gets scarier. You can't just use a defensive strategy. You can't just save money because the killer inflation is relentless and will keep coming back, sequel after sequel, to come kill your money. To truly be a hero, you need to go offensive. You need to invest. Inflation kills your money, but investing kills inflation. So what is inflation? Who is this mysterious killer? Well, it can be defined in a number of ways. It is the rate at which the money supply, the amount of money we have in circulation, is expanding or inflating. It is the rate at which the currency is falling or declining in value. It is the rate at which goods and services are increasing in price. Sorry, that should be that's a bad thing. We don't want to pay more. But most importantly, and how it's really gonna affect you personally, is it is a decrease in your money's purchasing power. This means that money that you have right now will be worth less in the future. Not worthless, but worth less. Now that doesn't mean that the actual dollar amount you have in your bank account will decrease. $500 in your bank account won't erode down to zero, but that $500 years from now will not be able to buy as much. You ever had your parents tell you back when they were dating, they could go out and spend about $8 and go for a dinner and drinks, and they would still have, a couple bucks left over to go to a drive-in movie and go watch a horror flick and fool around and conceive you in the back of their 1985 station wagon, and all that is inflation at work. The part about the money being able to buy more back in those days, not about your dad and your mom getting together. That's your dad at work. Anyways, take a look at the Bank of Canada inflation calculator. I'll drop a link in the description and you can have a horrifying time with this. The value of something here that was $10,000 in the year I was born, 1987, is actually over twice that price today. So in other words, our money from 1987 has lost more than half of its purchasing power. Ah! Oh yeah! Sorry. So how does inflation occur? Are we intentionally making our dollars worth less over time? Is it just a natural occurrence in an economy? Now this is where it starts to get really scary and honestly kind of confusing. Now first we have cost push inflation. Oh yeah, we got a big budget for this show. Now cost push inflation is when there is an increase in the cost to produce goods and services and it gets pushed to the consumers. Maybe a storm shows up and kills an entire crop of corn. Maybe all the corn workers are sick of all these corn crop killing storms and they demand higher corn wages and more corn benefits. These all add to the cost of corn production. Now, when you go to the movie theater and you order the large popcorn with the butter topping made from the churned milk that came from the cow that was fed the corn to produce that, all that there, the increased price you're seeing there is inflation at work. It's also movie theaters completely gouging you with the prices since they don't really make it on the movie tickets. They make it with the corn. Everybody's getting that corn money. Damn, I want some corn. And though corn is so sweet, there's nothing sweet about paying more. We've also seen demand pull inflation. Big budget on this show. Now, this is where a product or service is highly demanded by the people and the supply cannot keep up. Let's say after watching this video and with all my dozen of subscribers, there's a high demand for corn. People are going nuts for corn. Something about me saying corn 20 times in this video has created an insatiable hunger and there's huge demand for corn. The corn company needs to hire more workers and they need to buy some extra corn machinery so they can manufacture more to keep up with this demand. And then they pass those extra costs over to the consumers and then the consumers pay more. Or sometimes maybe the company just knows that, there really is high demand for our product right now. God, I want some corn. Come on, baby. Yeah. Okay, back to the video. We've also seen demand pull inflation happen with housing. Houses in high demand, short supply will drive prices up. It's a seller's market rather than a buyer's, and then this high demand will inflate the prices. Now, this not only affects the resale market, but it also affects the new home and the home renovation market. This in turn impacts the cost of products used for building homes and for renovating homes, lumber and steel. Not corn this time. Unless it's like the witch's house from Hansel and Gretel and it's like candy corn. Earlier I said that inflation is really the rate at which the money supply is expanding, hence the word inflation. The amount of money that exists is growing. Well, how can that happen? The only entities that can really create money from nothing are banks and governments. Well, they do, and they each have systems in place to increase the money supply or the amount of currency changing hands. Why? Well, they maintain this control of inflation as a means of balancing economic growth. Step up on the gas and increase production more and have the economy expand, or ease up on the gas when the production cannot meet the demand. That balance. And usually 2% growth per year is kind of like the government's cruise control. That's the average economic growth that they find is the right balance, and this is known as the rate of inflation. So on average, your money is worth less about 2% per year. Though sometimes that number does fluctuate. Sometimes it fluctuates a lot. And depending where you live and what currency you use, sometimes it has fluctuated straight to hell. And sometimes, honestly, it's hard to know exactly what that number is with confidence. So how are banks controlling inflation? How are they stepping on that gas and easing up on it? How do banks affect inflation? Well, central banks, such as the Central Bank of Canada or the US Federal Reserve, can lower interest rates. This makes borrowing money cheaper, which makes a lot of people want to go out and borrow money, which allows the banks to create a lot more loans. When banks create these loans, they're essentially birthing little money babies into existence and giving it to qualifying people and businesses. Creating money out of thin air, in other words, inflating the money supply. When there is more supply of money, more money in people's hands, people want to spend, which causes demand to go up, which causes demand pull inflation, which causes goods and services to go up. Now, moving on to governments, they have the ability to change policy. That means that they can increase the amount of money made available to businesses and consumers. Now, if a government were to cut taxes, like that ever happens, a business with more money in its hands might want to use it to hire more workers or buy some new equipment. That could lead to cost push inflation. In order to create this particular good or service, it costs more now. They got to pay for these extra workers, extra equipment. It gets passed on to the consumers. And central banks like the Central Bank of Canada and the US Federal Reserve can print money into existence by essentially changing some numbers in a database that sends newly created money to its citizens. We've seen this in the form of CERB checks in Canada, Canada Emergency Response Benefit checks, and also stimulus checks in the US. With both examples, there is an increase in the money supply. Well, why can't we just print as much money as we want, right? It sounds good. Well, let me play devil's advocate here. The government sort of taxes us inconspicuously with this thing called inflation, which on average is about 2% per year. But occasionally they're going to send me some government stimmies or some government CERB checks. That sounds pretty fair, right? Hey, man, why can't we just print all the damn money that we want? Well, essentially in doing this, it does nothing to combat inflation. In fact, if anything, this is like the origin story of the monster of inflation. This is how you create that. It's kind of like that moment in the horror movie where, Tiffany, the main girl, she takes the knife and she bravely stabs the killer inflation. And it seems like it's over, like she won, it's over. But it seems like kind of too easy, right? She looks over at her captain of the football team boyfriend, Daryl, who's been bleeding out in the corner. And she's breathing heavy. And she goes, "We did it, baby. We got him. Everything's gonna be okay now." And then the music hits a crescendo and the killer inflation comes back from the dead, takes the knife out of his own abdomen and then just starts getting her in the jugular. And you're like, damn it! Oh, you had to burn him, Tiffany, or kill him the way he was born or something, or chop off his head. All you did was make him more angry. And that's what printing money is. It just makes inflation more bloodthirsty. Oh, I am Zorro with a smashed in hat. I'm out of Halloween costumes. All right, back to the video. Money needs to be backed by goods and services. It's just this magical made-up Harry Potter thing that we use to track the exchange of goods and services. It's a ledger, a list, a tally showing who owes what to whom. That's all it is. A touchdown is worth 6 points. If you inflated it to 16 points and inflated the other points too, adding extra points across the board doesn't really help anything. It doesn't mean anyone worked harder. Yeah, sure, Daryl, captain of the football team, he's still, he's a great player. But in the end, his cute dimples didn't save him and Tiffany when they were fighting the killer inflation. The killer still got him too. Inflation. An increased money supply increases demand. And too much demand and not enough goods and services to keep up makes prices go up. And then your money dies. RIP. I hope you'll join me for the gruesome sequel, Inflation is Coming Back, in the next video. There's a lot still to talk about, so viewer beware. You're in for a scare. Goosebumps! We also have our free tool called Whoop Assets. The link is in the description, so open up a can of Whoop Assets.